It was early on a crisp autumn morning when Martin stepped into his car in Laval. The sun had just begun to rise, casting a soft golden glow over the suburban landscape, and the world still seemed asleep. Today was not an ordinary drive. He hadn't been to Repentigny in years, not since the days when he and his father would take this very route to visit family for weekend dinners. But today, he was making the drive for a different reason, to meet someone he hadn't seen in nearly a decade. As he eased onto Autoroute 440, his mind wandered back to his childhood. He and his father, Pierre, used to spend hours talking in the car. Pierre was an old-school man, quiet most of the time, but when they were driving, the stories came out. Martin could hear his voice even now, faint but clear, like the hum of the engine beneath him. Repentigny always felt like the edge of the world, his father would say, glancing out at the wide-open skies. But in a good way, you know. Like once you get there, everything else melts away. Martin merged onto Autoroute 40 East. He'd driven this highway 1,000 times for work, but this time it felt different. The trees lining the road were ablaze with fall colors, their reds and yellows flickering in the wind like the memories he couldn't shake. He hadn't seen Luke, his childhood friend, in so long. A falling out, as these things tend to happen, left them distant for years. But now Luke had reached out, just a simple text, but it was enough. Let's catch up. Repentigny. Same park. The same park, Parc de Laval. He smiled at the thought. They'd spent countless hours there as teenagers, sitting by the water, talking about their dreams, their plans. And then life had gotten in the way, school, work, relationships, misunderstandings. Martin wasn't sure why Luke wanted to meet now, but he felt it in his gut that this was important. As the car sped along the highway, the landscape shifted from bustling suburbs to more open spaces. The Rivière des Prairies shimmered in the distance, and the sight of the water brought a wave of nostalgia. His father used to slow down near the riverbank, pointing out little details Martin had long forgotten. The way the water sparkled under the sun, the quietude of the passing boats, the sense of peace that came with crossing the bridge into Repentigny. Martin checked the time. He had about 30 minutes before the meeting. The road was smooth and familiar, and he let his mind drift again. He wondered what Luke had been up to all these years. Had life treated him well? Did they still have anything in common, or had time pulled them too far apart? As he approached the exit for Repentigny, Martin noticed the faint outline of the St. Lawrence River, vast and steady. The road curved gently as he took the exit, the town of Repentigny unfolding before him like a page from an old book. The familiar streets, the quiet rows of houses, and the peaceful charm of this riverside town made him feel like he was slipping back into a place he once knew, but had forgotten. He pulled into the parking lot at Parc de Laval, noticing the sparse crowd of early morning walkers and joggers. The park was just as he remembered it, green, serene, the trees bending gently toward the water. Martin stepped out of the car, breathing in the cool, crisp air. It was quiet, save for the distant call of geese flying south. He spotted Luc sitting on one of the benches by the water, looking out over the river. His old friend hadn't changed much, a bit older, a bit more weathered, but still Luc. Martin hesitated for a moment before walking over, unsure of what to say. Would it be awkward? Would they even be able to bridge the years that had separated them? Luc turned before Martin could call out, a small smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "You're on time," he said, standing up. "I wasn't sure if you'd come." Martin chuckled softly, slipping his hands into his jacket pockets. "Yeah, well, I wasn't sure either. But here I am." They stood there for a moment, the tension hanging between them like a tightrope. Then, without another word, they sat down on the bench, just like they had done so many times before. "I've been thinking about this place a lot lately," Luc said after a long pause, gesturing toward the river. "About the past. About you and me." "Yeah," Martin replied, staring at the rippling water. "Me too." The silence was comfortable this time, filled with the quiet understanding of two people who had lived their separate lives but were now finding their way back. They talked about everything and nothing all at once, the good times, the regrets, the things that had kept them apart. The sun rose higher in the sky, casting long shadows across the park, and as they talked, it felt like no time had passed at all. Eventually, the conversation slowed, and they both just watched the water for a while, letting the weight of the years slip away. Repentigny still felt like the edge of the world, but in that moment, Martin realized his father had been right. Sometimes, getting to the edge was the only way to find your way back. As they stood up to leave, Luc turned to Martin. "Let's not wait another 10 years, huh?" Martin smiled. "No, let's not." They parted ways, and as Martin drove back along Autoroute 40, the sun high in the sky now, he felt lighter. The drive back was just as beautiful, but now it wasn't filled with the same uncertainty. Repentigny wasn't just a place from his past anymore, it was the place where something new had begun.